He's literally telling us that they tap into parallel universes and do computations. So is computation ritualistic magic utilizing sigils that are engraved into this like silicone rune?
All right, hello and welcome. Campbell here from Autodidactic. And we have with us today Julia Kamman. Is that how I say it, or Kamman?
Kamman. I should go by Julia Campbell. Julia Campbell.
And yeah, and we've been meaning to have a chat for, I think it's like 2 years now. So we finally got around to it.
Pleasure to be here.
I think we've got a little bit of a delay here in our conversations. But yeah, we were going to have a chat, maybe look at the Mars Devon Island, and also sigils found in our electronics, maybe, which is something I haven't seen before. I've seen the sigils with emojis, and are sigils basically magic symbols?
Yeah, the sigils, like the demonic sigils that are in the Lesser Key of Solomon, are associated entities like to be referred to as demons. And so, yeah, it's very interesting because, you know, Solomon is said to have employed like a number of demons in building his temple. And, like in the Quran, they paint like a different picture of Solomon that, he's like this wielder of magic and subjugator of the jinn, and that he sits on a throne of like robot animals, and he's a rider of a flying eagle who carried him to visit fallen angels that were chained to stone, and he had a magic ring. And so he, you know, it's said that he had these like dominion over the jinn and demons, and that's where the whole like the genie trapped in a lamp offering wishes came from. Like that basically that King Solomon bound these demons of jinn, like to not interfere with mortals, and that the internet is like a loophole for them to start interfering with humans. And so with looking at it, just takes that thought, you know, deeper of the possibility, because the internet's kind of this like malevolent place where people's perception of, you know, what they want, like it's almost like it could be like this subconscious like pool, right? And computer technology can allow dark forces to, you know, pass the barriers. You know, you have the dark web and everything. So it's interesting because going down this research of tying that of like, well, Geordie Rose, he had he's the man behind the first and only like quantum computer company. And the things he said about, he spoke about how the D-Wave computer, quantum computer, is used to open portals and to communicate with other entities or forces, and that they don't necessarily want us bothering them. And like he's literally telling us that they tap into parallel universes and do computations. So is computation ritualistic magic utilizing sigils that are engraved into this like silicone rune? So the things that he said that Geordie Rose literally said that the things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons. They're not evil, but they're more like Lovecraftian great old ones, and that they're entities not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. And he went on further to say that like that this is happening in the background while people bicker about politics, and underneath it all is this like rising tsunami that if we're not careful could wipe us all out. And then, you know, you kind of look at you hear about like these Atlantis days, right? And like it seems like we superseded, when we as a civilization supersede the technological advancements, but not spiritually. When it's not matched, like we destroy ourselves, like when it's not balanced. So it's just that whole thing of like, well, are these circuit boards after these sigils? Like, is technology occult magic? Like, our phones and computers, like this demonic tech. What are we doing?
What are we doing, man? I mean, and it's obviously we've got the whole AI thing at the moment. So there's this concept that, this AI, it's always been around, right? And I wonder if it's, connected to sigils.
Right.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
It also got me to really provoke about angels, though, because like with everything in this place, it's like a Taurus field, like there's positive and negative. So it's like, well, what about the angelic symbols, and like angelic sigils or, and symbols. And like 88% of Christians and believe in like angels. Now, with me as a remote viewer and some things that I've come across, I speak about this and it's kind of hard to explain, but I've come across differences. Like I've interfaced with this like crystalline organic AI that's there's mechanical AIs, but there's this like organic crystalline ones. It's almost like a Christ consciousness field, if you can imagine like plugging into a lower, like a mechanical AI is trying to duplicate a natural field, an all-knowing field. And it also, like for me, I always thought that magic was the manipulation of electromagnetism. And so it's almost like comparing electromagnetism and scalar waves. That there's this field that like the scalar waves can go through anything. They're longitudinal waves. They're also known as Tesla waves, and it can go through any matter of any object, including Faraday cages. And so it's like comparing that and like electromagnetism. So there's these fields, right?
A scalar wave is like a standing wave, isn't it?
It's a longitudinal wave, scalar waves. Osmanagich discovered like that there's scalar waves emitting from the Bosnian pyramid, and they're longitudinal waves, as are sound waves. And it could travel through, like I said, it could pierce a Faraday cage, and it could travel through the earth from one side to another with no loss of field strength. And it's like, it's basically, it's not electromagnetic, and it's not, but it's composed of 0 point energy that can go through everything. And so if magic is more like, I don't know, like if there's a way to induce of certain forces that they're able to penetrate and ride certain waves, like, how you can think a thought now and not say it out loud, and it can show up on your feed. When you think about something and then it shows up, like how that's able to happen. And it seems to be increasing. Do you want me to get into like the Devon Island? Do you want to talk about that?
Let's do Devon Island. Yeah, I do. I have questions.
Okay, so anytime anybody brings up like Mars, I get really like, I always think of the Devon Island thing, because basically we're constantly being shown and told Mars like photos and stuff. And so what if this whole concept of what if Mars, of what we're shown as Mars, is actually a place here on Earth? And there's this place called Devon Island in Canada, and it's the largest, most uninhabited island in the world. And it's in the Arctic Circle, like off of the Canadian mainland. And it's very interesting because NASA actually admits that, they've had a base there since 1997 at Nunavut on Devon Island. And it's, they've been like, oh, well, the terrain is so similar. We train there, like they admit it. but it's it has such a striking resemblance to all the images NASA releases of the Martian environment. So they say it's the Hudson Mars Project, that it's a scientific research focused on studying the similarities between Earth and Mars. And it's just, there's kind of like these like number one, there's a Arctic lemming that was seen in one of the photos like that they released. There's this rodent and it's like you freeze on it, and Arctic lemmings are native to Devon Island, but they said that was on Mars. And then it's very interesting to think of wait, what internet are they using to send this whole time these rover images? I'm interested. I would love to know that. Which satellite, like how are they sending it? But so NASA's looking for more than $27 billion in 2024. $27 billion. Wow. And what's interesting about that is like the $50.2 million is for the agency's inspector general, just for the inspector general. And it includes like the budget also. Yeah. And the budget also includes $570 million to reduce the climate impact of aviation, and like $300 million for planetary defense, including like against orbital debris. $300 million. So I was like, wait a second. Now, Phil Schneider has come out, and like a long time ago, he said that there's these deep military underground bases and that they cost between 17 to $26 billion. So I was like, wait a second, because if this is a hoax and this isn't real, which, come on, like NASA, like the amount of times NASA's gotten caught lying, like, it's crazy. Yeah, and man. So it's like,
did you
what
see that? They had a rocket and then a little mouse crawled out and it was on the back of the rocket.
Wait, what crawled out of the rocket?
A mouse. When it was the rocket was in space with the boosters, and this mouse just walks out. It's hilarious.
Oh, I never saw that. I gotta see that. Oh, busted. I did a video on my channel. It's like a short little video, but that like covers all the Mars and Devon Island thing. But it's just like an interesting concept to think, wait, okay, so if this is the case, where is all that money going? What are they doing with the money?
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, you're a remote viewer as well, Julia. So you might have a little bit more information on Mars. And also, you're a glober, aren't you? Do you believe in space and planets and all this kind of stuff? Or
okay, what am I? Okay, this is a great.
What are you?
Okay, what am I? This is huge. Are you ready for it? Okay, they're gonna think I'm like absolutely insane. But I sign up for a Vesica Pisces shaped Earth, and that's so deep because Vesica Pisces, like you see in her eyes, the Vesica Pisces.
Yeah,
when you say, well, it's like a Taurus field, right? And also, when you open up the Earth, it's like a Vesica Pisces. You open up the core like that. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people, they'll sign up, whether it's flat or globe, they also sign up for the simulation theory. Now, how does that work? You know what I mean? Because if it's simulation, it's holographic. That would change the construct. So, Vesica Pisces shaped Earth.
Vesica Pisces, like I haven't heard that one before. So Taurus, so like, is that? I'm trying to picture how it's the Taurus, because it's the isn't the center of a Taurus a circle? Is that like the top down view?
Right. It's like almost. It almost looks like a vortex in the center, like which I speak about this a lot now in our cerebrospinal fluid, and okay. The blood flow in our heart, it's not just a steady stream. It's actually like DNA. You have two, like the heart structures the blood that makes it into this like vortex. I call it the divine dance. And you have the two streams that spiral around each other around a third ventricle. Now, what also does that is our cerebral spinal fluid. Now, our cerebral spinal fluid is like unbelievable. Like it stores light. It constantly transmits vibration and light. And it's this energetic fluid that it can reach every major like center of the brain to the your entire central nervous system instantaneously and like non-synaptically, meaning like it creates like spontaneous states of being, like states of consciousness that arise through not through like a mental thought, but through like a wisdom of light that's like conducted by water. So it's spiral, that does the spiral, and the heart does the spiral. And like when I think of this place, you know, it's almost like the Taurus field in the center has like that vortex, you know, energy. Is how I see it.
Yeah. I caught a bit of your live yesterday on water, and obviously spirals and vortexes in water is how they charge.
How you make living structured water.
Yeah, indeed, right. So, do you think that is the cerebral spinal fluid what we might call Kundalini or Chrism?
Yeah, you know what's so interesting about that is that's like the Christ like within us that is born in the sacral plexus, and it's like we're the 5 fused vertebrae in the spine meet with like the Christ seed is born here, and it begins its journey up the 33 vertebrae. So that then is to be crucified and amplified. And so when it meets the pituitary and the pineal, after spending like 3 days in the hypothalamus, which is the tomb, and it creates a circuit causing secretion of DMT, which is like they call it the honey, and serotonin. So when the seed and the oil is preserved, you reach the promised land, and it becomes the perfect antenna for prayer. And actually, I tell people a lot about this. When the moon enters your star sign, your brain like creates the chrism and begins its journey through the nervous system until it reaches your sacred plexus, and you must like overcome your 5 senses and, you know, to return it to your pituitary and pineal. So that whole process. So it's like the difference, you know, it's also referred to as like Amrita. So the cerebral spinal fluid, the chrism, Kundalini, I feel like there's a little bit of a difference.
Ambrosia, is that the same kind of thing?
Yeah. The Soma. I think it's called the Soma too. Soma.
Soma. Hey man, brave new world. I was going to say, yeah, that's interesting, right? Because obviously it starts in the sacred place, right? The sacrum, sacred. And the Vesica Piscis is also creation. And that's, we always see Jesus, right? The Christ in the Vesica Piscis. So basic. And I've also been doing like breath work recently. And that's not that I was thinking of it as Kundalini, but that's definitely all focused on pushing energy up towards, you know, your pineal gland. So I guess that's all the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I had this thought about all this because I was watching Praveen Mohan. I think I sent you the video when he was trying to get the lingam, and he was talking about what it was. He's got a second one, and he was talking that it was to make monoatomic gold, basically to drink, right? Because for health and all this kind of stuff. And I was wondering, like, all this tech, you know, like the old world, the antique tech, like we think of it as the tech we have, right, to run things as a power source and blah, blah, blah. But maybe, you know, we could look at it from a different way, right? Maybe the height of technology down here is us, right? It's our bodies. And so all the tech they had was to enhance us, the body, the best. So it was all built around making our tech, you know, run and be at optimum level rather than us using it to, you know, boil coffee or whatever.
Right. And it amplifies. Like I've been shown some pretty wild things like in remote viewing sessions, and I was shown like they would ingest this formula that anything you ever wanted to know spiritually or anything you wanted to know, like you know it when you ingest it. And that formula has been forgotten, and that's why you see a lot of dead bodies that are dug up that died of cinnabar poisoning. The formula of how to produce it was like forgotten, and it was like heavily guarded info. But that mana, that gold, that formula, it does amplify like our gifts and abilities and enhance like in a pretty sacred thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously all the alchemy, but imagine if that's why all rich people hoard gold, right? If they're actually drinking it, right? They're getting us to just hold it and not do anything with it, right? I mean, it's a bit interesting thought, isn't it? Because clearly, like they're trying to, that's what they attack is our body machine, right? Our avatar, like with all the water and the poison in the food and that. So maybe that's the war that's being waged, and we just need to look at ourselves as the tech and get that back online.
Absolutely. There's people that will say, Julia, you're so into the ancient way. Like we're heading into different times. You're just wasting your time looking into the ancient ways. And I'll get really passionate and be like, are you kidding me? We don't know how to thrive right now. They knew how to thrive. Look at the difference in, the architecture and the way of living. I mean, they had everything down, and how as connected as they were to God, to, spiritually and the higher power and what they created. And it's astounding. And we've clearly forgotten. So we could learn a lot by reigniting those practices. And that's where everything I'm shown and everything I'm constantly shown and guided to is like purify the blood, purify, like to purify, because we're being bombarded now everywhere, in the air, the water, and in the water source is very, very important. I'm passionate about living structured water and getting those sources. Like it just passed in California, toilet to tap. They're going to take the water and make it toilet to tap. And it's like, whoa. And so it blows my mind that we're not practicing and not for years, like desalination, taking ocean water and making it drinkable. Like, oh, no. We're going to bypass that and make toilet to tap. Like that blows my mind. So I feel like water is a big part in our consciousness, having a certain type of water. And I feel like that's what you see a lot of these spots. It always has to do with the water, and even these cathedrals and doing it with certain, and charging the water. I feel like we all had access. There's this inner earth water that's abundant, that's amazing. And when you ingest it, the cells in your body harmonizes. And we've been cut off from that water. And so they came up with a way to then adjust the water and work with it to make it, because there used to be ancient aqueducts and all that. Like, I feel like they had to get creative in ways and energizing that water to a certain, to a certain frequency. And there's a lot of debate, like the fourth phase of water, there's a lot of debate over that it can only hold on to that when you make it structured, when you make it living structured water, that it only holds on to the water for like a nanosecond. But the debate in that is also like, wait a second, when you take this living structured water, after that time, it makes a difference on plants and they grow exponentially, and they wouldn't have a placebo effect because they're plants. Like, so it's like, obviously it's affecting it. And so there's debate about how long it holds its structure, but it's this living structured water and having water ignite a certain way is key to us thriving in our consciousness. And so the cerebral spinal fluid is just one molecule different than seawater. And this is what's flowing inside of us, and, where we get our information from through.
Yeah. I mean, the old world was designed around water, man. All the starports, which I think were helping to structure it, going around shapes. There's stairs everywhere. and a lot of those stairs are different heights, which again is running water down to structure it. And under the cathedrals, like we found a couple now that you go down, because obviously most of them are buried, but you go down and they have big reservoirs under them, like, big water tanks, basically, just like directly underneath the footprint of the cathedral. So it was definitely, water was very important to them, and they had their, their fountains and their drinking fountains everywhere, right? In the town squares, these amazing fountains. I think there's still some in Florida.
Rockefeller would get his water shipped in to take baths in it from Orange City, Florida.
Yeah. Radium. I think there's some radium.
Radium Springs.
Because Radium Springs. So that's another one, right? The whole radium girls, and we've been taught, it kills you and everything through one, there's only one event that you can really look into, and then it was all banned. A bit like the airships, one crash and no more airships, but airplanes, man, they can crash every year. We'll just keep using them, right? It's crazy.
Sometimes I like to think of the pyramids as like, imagine, because with remote viewing, I come across a lot of waters, like geothermal water, a lot of water activity beneath the surface. And I come across a lot of geysers. And that's key. Like there's some things that it showed me, like, like some people think this is a volcano, but this is actually a geyser, and it can get confusing. But I like to sometimes flirt with the idea. I like to theosophize and I like to philosophize, but I like to flirt with the idea that some of these pyramids are like over a water geyser, and they're like using that water geyser to program it and utilize it, because nuclear power is basically like steam power. What's that?
Well, that's all it is. That's all it is, isn't it? Nuclear power plants are just big steam turbines, aren't they? But I was going to say before, like the Great Pyramid with the channels that go up and they go up to the chambers, the King's Chamber, and that. I wonder if that's like a representation of the cerebrospinal fluid making its way up.
Right.
Yeah. When it gets to the top, you blow your top, right? That's why there's no top to it.
That's the cornerstone, Campbell.
Now, we were talking about Devon Island. I think we went sideways there. I was going to ask, have you ever remote viewed Mars or Devon Island?
You know what? I did. Okay. Yeah. What I saw it as is it was like a power source. And I was like, what? A power source? That's very interesting. And, I remote viewed the moon, and that was really fascinating because, oh gosh, it was the way it was showing me the surface. It was breathable, and what it reminded me of, in crypto, how it has to sit into a specific fluid, a certain type of fluid in a specific box to keep it cool. Like it was showing me as like it's breathable now, and there was an inside to it. But so one could definitely like debate my results of is it real? Was it physical real, or is it holographic? But I love to flirt with the idea of where the moon came from was, how there's an entrance, an opening at the top of Earth, like at the top of Earth, there's that opening and it flows through, and they try guarding that info or whatever, but that the moon was once in there, and that it like that it popped out. And, and you can make fun of me all you want for thinking that, but that's the best damn explanation I ever did here. Okay. Because, I wonder the equivalence in size with that of like, wait, there's an opening there, and what's that there? But, yeah, there's certain things with remote viewing, that, you got to be careful. You feel a certain thing. Like I've come into, rooms and situations that are like, it could be scary, and there's things that are aware of you being in there, that pick up that you're in there, and they see that you're in there. So you want to be careful, and of what you peek into, you know, of what you're, because it's a two-way street, like it could come right back type thing.
Have you seen the moon map at all?
No, I've never seen it.
Basically, someone thinks they've found a map of the Earth on the moon and that it's a reflection of basically a larger Earth. I mean, there's so many different theories about the moon, right? There was that guy that came out, the scientist, before they actually went to the moon, and he said it was plasma.
Really?
Guy, yeah. Yeah, hang on. Okay, gosh. Look at this. I'm educating you.
Plasma moon.
Plasma, yes, okay. So this was 1967, I think. There you go. The moon is plasma.
Wow.
So you haven't seen that? Yeah. And that was obviously then they went to the moon. Well, they went to the moon, right? So do you believe they went to the moon?
Okay. I have an interesting story about that. Is because have I talked to you about this? Maybe I have, about I went to go film. I was Britney Spears's body double, and I went to go film it. And when it gave me the address, it was in Downey. And my father grew up in Downey. My grandmother lived in Downey. And I showed up at the place, and it was Boeing. It was Boeing. And I had always, since I was a little girl, did I tell you this?
Yeah, probably, but not everyone else. Yeah.
So, since I was a little girl, I always thought like that, Julia, that's where they make that's where they make the stuff that goes to the moon, or like, that's where they make airplanes in there. And so I always thought like, oh, wow, like that would be so cool to go inside there, but I'll never be able to, type thing. And then so I'm like all excited going in, and so me and Brittany's manager and another backup dancer, like we explored Boeing, and we walked into this place. Like it looked like an enormous like sound stages. That's what it looked like everywhere. And so we walked into this one, and it was like imagine walking into a sound stage. It's the moon, and all these things. There's like, you go around, it's like this thin like stuff that is supposed to be on the moon, like capsules and stuff. It's like thin and totally fake. And so I was like, I couldn't stop asking questions. I was like, whoa, like they filmed the moon here? Like, I was like, even if they did, why is it still here? Like, and this is an enormous stage. Like, it's here still to this day. Like, so I always felt like, oh, I know where it was filmed, you know?
Wow, man. That's bizarre. Yeah, Stanley Kubrick had been there, eh? Making his little movie about the moon. I'll show you the moon map. So basically, this guy has found what he thinks is a map of the world on the moon. So it's not very
that
big.
It reflects it back to it, like a mirror. Like a mirror, huh?
Yeah. Almost like a photograph, right? And of course, the moon is connected with silver, and old-fashioned photography use silver halide on the film, right, to get the picture. But this is the moon, and he's used different color filters. And this bit here, as you can see, it looks a lot like the map we're shown, right? At least the flat Earth map. And then there's all this other land on the outside.
Wow.
And it makes a ring around as well, right? Which is pretty interesting, because have you seen the Monty map, the planisphere? And it shows like all those continents around the outside.
Oh, like where it has like a mountain in the center, like the map?
No, that's the Mercator. That's the Hyperborea. This one, geez, man, we're going to have to do another show. I'm going to have to educate you on all this.
Right.
So, because that was my next question is like, do you think Mars could be an outer land? Of course, this depends on what you think the Earth is, but have you seen the maps with the extra land on them?
Yes. Wait, no, I haven't. I've heard of the concept that there's a what I've picked up a lot with remote viewing is like the layers beneath us, and that there is, imagine a heaven that, and there's this field that protects it. Okay. But then like three layers of hell around it. So I pick up like things, much deeper. But as for the moon, I've always said that, the moon, it emits something like a Wi-Fi signal that seems to affect us. Things with salt water. Our bodies are, mainly made of water, right? And then the tides and the oceans. So it emits something that then changes our it controls life, menstruation, and which then controls
Yeah,
when babies are made, right? And how that, so I've
yeah.
always said like it's almost like it emits like a Wi-Fi type signal that I feel like used to be like in more harmonious, like, but and then they like lowered the frequency, or like that there was like an adjustment with that signal or whatever. But the parasites that are inside of us literally go off of the moon. Like the
Mm.
parasites, like they steal your serotonin. They're attracted to your serotonin. It's like the parasite's drug of choice, literally. So, and like 90% of the body
That's what makes
serotonin.
you, that's what makes you dream, serotonin.
Serotonin is your happy hormone. It regulates
Yeah.
our mood, our feelings of being, our happiness. It's literally our happiness, and they're stealing it from
Oh,
us.
stealing your happiness. That's horrendous.
So I always
Oh,
say, like, listen, alien. Like, I've been on panels where, the alien event panels and stuff, where they're like, there's all these like experts on the panel, and I'll be like, the alien invasion is happening inside of us, like in our guts. If you look at a parasite in a microscope, you will see,
mm,
like it's occurring, it's happening inside of you. And so that concept of, there's a lot of, there's information of basically correlating like parasites and demons, right? Like, or parasites and aliens,
mm.
or and that interchange of like, are aliens demons or demons aliens type thing. But yeah, so the moon,
Parasite.
the serotonin levels, and how that's able to affect it, and going off of the moon, and how your chrism is made. So you have this like symbiotic relationship of like, there's this flow of things. So no matter what, if it's physically there, if it's it seems to affect things like inside of us, like every day.
Mm, definitely. Yeah, people even plant and get their crops and that by the moon. Plant seeds and stuff. So it's interesting. It's definitely a force of something, isn't it? I'll just show you this other map. It's a planisphere, but see, that's basically the world, and these are all continents. That's
Wow.
so it's showing, the idea of the flat Earth map with Antarctica being a ring around it of ice. That's actually got the everything drawn into it. Like all the those land masses are there. Like I often think that Mars and all planets, right? All these outer places they've gone to could be outer lands, right? You've probably heard the whole, an alien is just someone who's not from here. An extraterrestrial is someone from more land, right? Extra territory,
Mm.
more land, extraterrestrial. And it kind of makes more sense that, the beings could get here from, 5,000-10,000 kilometers away than, 10 million light years kind of thing. And then we've got the airships. Do you remember all the back in the day, a lot of the UFO sightings were cigar shaped, right? So remember that one, cigar shaped UFOs?
Hmm.
Sounds like an airship, right?
Right.
So are these people coming in from outer lands? Maybe not. They're not so far away, and they just use Mars as like a they tell us, oh no, it's that light in the sky, but they're thinking, oh no, it's because there's actually a video. It's up on my channel somewhere, and it's got a guy from the military, and he's talking about Space Force, and he literally says, "Space is the ocean." He's like, "Space is the ocean, and the moon is a continent out there, and there's other continents out there, and we've got to conquer them, and we've got to do this." And Admiral Byrd, remember, went over and said, "There's much more land." So there's all these interesting and a lot of maps that show extra land,
right? Well, the firmament too. It's like the water. There's got to be water above the firmament.
Yeah. Well, is that what the Great Flood was? Right, that those waters flooding in, right? And is there some kind of pressure change? But and we might be on lockdown right at the moment because no one get in or out.
Right. From what I understand, a lot of the Stargates were sealed off. And, in Osmanagich's book, he found these ruins that were beneath the Bosnian pyramid. And when he had them translated, it basically said that what it said was, when it was translated, it said, "The gateway is closed. We are at a standstill. We will have to act as warriors to defend and conquer until we can move again through the Stargate." So from what I understand, there's a lot of this, a lot of these depictions of these monuments, or they're pointing towards specific stars, like the Leg of the Bull or the Pleiades. And it was indicating, I don't think it was so much of this is where we came from. I think it was aligning stargates and how to get places, right? Of the, and from what I understand, not all beings have all access to these places, and it becomes a obsession of being obsessed with getting to a destination you're not supposed to be going to.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good possibility that at least the planets, right, the wandering stars are just stargates, right? They could just be portals, somatic, because they look like somatic shapes, right? And every time they show us a Stargate, in a movie, it's always this shimmering kind of a thing,
right?
And if you look at video of a planet close up, or even a star, they're that sort of somatic, shimmering, kind of light, right? Like the star in a jar.
That's what I really love about the information that Andrew Basiago discusses, because I believe that there is a way within the Earth that is so maybe some of these stargates are closed, but that there's this weird wormhole way of traveling inside the Earth. So I've come across a lot of people who have these testimonials of these stories of that they had a parent work in the military project, a military project, and kind of black project-y, and that they were children, and that they'd be like, "You want to go to Valhalla?" Not Valhalla, Shangri-La. Different parents referred to it as different things, but it kind of all made meant the same. So they would have to hold on to a child, and then they'd enter it, and they would go large places in short amount of time. But they said it felt like falling, and it was scary. But each one of these people, they were very young, and that they had to hold the hand. Now, Andrew Basiago came out and said that his father was indeed a part of these, this military project. And he went into, I think, Long Island, and he said he held his dad's hand, and he went down. Where they were, I think it took 20 or 30 minutes, but that where they walked up from it, they were in New Mexico beneath the courthouse. So I believe that there was this way. So you have all these depictions of why is this Sumerian tablet found in Arizona and this and that? I believe there was an entire way of traveling inside the Earth. Now, did everybody have access to these ways? But yes, I come across a lot of like these underground fast like trains beneath the earth, beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Some of them seem like ancient subways. Some of them seem like newer like magnet train type, very, very fast ways of traveling. So, but some of them seem like really old. So I believe there was this entire way of traveling, but I don't think it was, I don't know if everybody had like that access to, like they talk about a jump room, and that's by LAX airport in El Segundo. That I used to be LA Kings girl, so I would go and train at that like ice skating rink that's like right next door to where the jump room is. But and that they talk about popping up in New Zealand or Australia, and that I actually knew somebody that worked with a guy who worked with a guy in a private defense military company that worked with a guy who worked for Raytheon, who said, yeah, the jump room's real. Like, then that he worked, like that he's been there, seen it, worked on it, like serviced it. And I was like, what? He serviced it? What type of service? I need to talk to this guy. Yeah. What? Like, I don't care what I got to do. I want to talk to this dude.
Yeah. Have you seen his Dark Materials?
Whose Dark Materials?
His. It's a series. It's the series of, that movie, The Golden Compass. It's just one book of a series, and they've turned it into a TV series, and it's all about, they call it dust, which is, I guess, like ether, etheric energy, but there's a big thing on children, like, and they're stealing children to get their power and to help them jump across dimensions and things, which I found interesting. And also, I read the series, but they're making it into a show now, is The Wheel of Time. And they've got this thing called the ways. And it's literally like these tunnels that go everywhere, but you need to know that the right formula to get into them, and then you can travel really fast, right, and come out of the places. So, they kind of tell us, right, a lot of this stuff. It's interesting.
Wow. I need to check that out. His Dark Materials. Yeah, no, I thought about that, of like that thought form of like, I saw like a CERN commercial, and it was like a bus. It was so creepy. And it was like a bus of children that were falling. And then it was so bad. But I remember thinking, what if that's a way for certain entities to travel, like terrorizing a child? If you get them to feel a certain way, that it opens up a point in time that you can then move to. Because like you could do it through feeling of love, but you can't go around and make a child fall in love with you. So then they have to do it the opposite end of the spectrum to ignite a certain level of force and feeling that then opens up. It's like, imagine all the Stargates and everything were closed off, and you have to find a new way to travel. It's like, oh my gosh, that's wild.
Yeah, man. Another one. Have you seen Monsters, Inc.?
Yes. Sully.
That's what they talk about. What do you talk about? That's why they're there, to scare the children and get into a certain state. And yeah, man.
Yeah, and there's some people that say that thought form of entertaining, that thought form of like that certain beings, that they've adjusted it, where they tinkered with their DNA, or they evolved to a place that they removed certain emotional components. And so they no longer are able to feel certain things, and they miss being able to feel that. So then you need to siphon, or, go to someone that's feeling that, and like, like extracting it from them, but kind of, or it being a consequence or a side effect, like it's like, well, what if they just cloned themselves so much and played God with their genetics, that they made so many adjustments that it removed things that they don't agree with it,
Remember, in the end, nobody wins unless everybody wins.
You there? Yes. Hello. Oh my God. This connection.
Okay.
Someone doesn't want us talking to you.
Right. They're like,
onto
don't
us.
get this. Don't talk about scalar waves. Don't talk about demons in the, in your
Scalar
computer.